This is your tech news briefing for Friday, September 2nd. I'm Zoe Thomas for The Wall Street Journal. Prosecutors are calling it their first case targeting insider trading in non-fungible tokens. In June, Nathaniel Chastain, a former employee of the NFT marketplace OpenSea, was accused of benefiting from knowledge about whether the prices of some digital art would go up. It's a novel case, and one that could test the bounds of fraud law in the U.S. But some lawyers say it could set a dangerous precedent that goes beyond digital assets. Joining us to discuss this is Richard Vanderford from the WSJ's Risk and Compliance Journal. Hi, Richard. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, start with reminding us what happened with Nathaniel Chastain.
So Nathaniel Chastain was an employee of OpenSea, which is a very large NFT marketplace. He was a product manager, and one of his duties was to pick what NFTs for sale would be put on the front of the website, featured on the website. And so he obviously knew what was going to go on the website. And he's accused of using that knowledge to buy up these NFTs before they went on the website. They would go on the website, it would drive interest, and he would quickly sell them to make big profits, according to prosecutors.
And what has his legal team said about these charges?
He's pleaded not guilty. His legal team isn't talking on the record to reporters, but they've asked that the charges be dismissed.
He's been charged under this wire fraud statute and not under securities fraud. Why is that important in this case?
When most people think about insider trading, they think about insider trading in stocks, which is often charged under a securities fraud statute. Wire fraud is a really old law. It's very broad. It encompasses all kinds of what people would think of as crooked behavior. And prosecutors really like it because it's very adaptable to new kinds of scams. So this case is really a test of whether his conduct can be charged under this wire fraud law that is very broad.
What have opponents of this kind of case said? I mean, how do they feel about that kind of approach?
A group of prominent New York defense attorneys have said that prosecutors are going too far in using the wire fraud statute this way and potentially criminalizing a lot of normal workplace conduct or minor misconduct that maybe shouldn't be a crime. Under the legal theory being used by prosecutors here, the crime is really in taking the information from his employer and using it to make money. So these defense lawyers have come up with a bunch of scenarios that most people wouldn't think of as criminal, like if a company's headquarters were moving and an executive used that information to buy a house before the market heated up, or if someone wrote a tell-all book about their boss in defiance of a non-disclosure agreement. These defense lawyers are saying under the prosecutor's theory in this case, that kind of taking of confidential workplace information could be a crime, but it probably shouldn't be.
They've asked the judge to dismiss this case. Do we know when we're going to kind of get a reaction from the judge? What we expect to hear from him?
Yeah, so there'll be a whole bunch of hearings on whether to dismiss the case. That kind of remedy, dismissing a case before it goes to a jury, is really rare. Judges are really inclined to give prosecutors the benefit of the doubt and let their cases go before a jury. But that said, there's appeals courts in New York as well, and the appeals court could be more skeptical. But I think it could take months or years to fully unfold.
What has the prosecution said about why they're taking this tactic, kind of going wire fraud as opposed to securities fraud?
They haven't outlined their legal theory or their sort of tactical legal decision, but if you go under a wire fraud theory, you arguably don't have to prove that a security was involved. And there's a lot of uncertainty about whether digital assets like NFTs or cryptocurrency can be considered a security. A lot of differences of legal opinion about that. So under this theory, the crime is just that he allegedly took information from his workplace and used that to profit. And you don't have to get into a question of, well, is this a security or is this not a security?
I wonder, though, this group of defense attorneys is saying it could set a precedent for workplace misconduct. Could it set a precedent for kind of how we think about digital assets and how crimes around digital assets are prosecuted?
Yeah, a win for the prosecutors here would be huge. It's the Manhattan federal prosecutors who brought this case, and they typically are very aggressive. And obviously, there's a lot of kind of digital asset work being centered in Manhattan and in New York. So if the prosecutors win and an appeals court agrees with them especially, then this theory would be vindicated, and assets that people might not have thought of as being an insider tradable asset will de facto be something you could insider trade and violate the law in that way.
NFTs were so popular last year. They were surging in value. Now that's not the case anymore. Will that in any way impact this trial?
I don't think prosecutors are going to walk away from a case like this because NFTs turn out to be sort of an irrelevant thing. I think once they start on a case, they want to win. And I think the prosecutors in Manhattan, they want to be seen policing these digital assets. They made a show of saying this is the first ever NFT insider trading case. They brought a case the month after this in cryptocurrency insider trading, and the relative popularity of NFTs isn't going to really change the way the trial goes.
All right, that's our reporter, Richard Vanderford. Thanks so much for joining us, Richard.
Thank you.
And that's it for Tech News Briefing this week. Our producer is Julie Chang. Our supervising producer is Chris Sinsley. Our executive producer is Kateri Yoakum. And I'm your host, Zoe Thomas. Before we go, a quick programming note. We'll be off this coming Monday for Labor Day, but we'll be back on Tuesday. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend.